Welcome to Understanding the Bible with Pastor Stephen. This is season 5, episode 11, Proof of God, Science. We'll start with Romans 1, verse 20. It says, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." Now, when it comes to the proof of God, the modern world usually thinks proof is just science, like scientific evidence. Well, I just wanted to clear that up a little bit before we get started. That is not precisely true. There are philosophical truths, like the laws of logic. There's moral truths. Murder is an evil act. So those things are true. There are historical truths. Columbus set sail in 1492 to try and discover a sea route to Asia, and there is no scientific evidence for that. There's historical evidence. There are things documented, but not scientific, mathematically proven, I can go find his ship type thing. Then there's aesthetic truths, like sunsets are beautiful. And we'll talk about truths here in just a moment. But I wanted to start with the idea that it's not merely science that proves things. So let's get into a definition of what proof is and what a truth is. Merriam-Webster defines proof as evidence that compels acceptance by the mind of a truth or a fact. For instance, in a courtroom, someone could be accused of murder because he had motive, right? May not be scientific evidence to prove it. However, the dude claims he's at a card game across town during the murder, but there's no video evidence. So there's no scientific evidence either way, but a testimony by two or three reliable witnesses would compel a jury to believe he didn't murder the victim. They know he was there. There's no scientific evidence, no video, no factual data, but we have reliable witnesses saying things. And that would compel us to accept that truth, but it has nothing to do with scientific evidence. Now, here's why I say that, because scientific laws or theories can't really provide 100% proof of a lot of things when it comes to what is out there or how things work. Because as we know, science is constantly being discovered, and oftentimes previous science is proven wrong by the new science that has been discovered, right? So you got to realize that when we talk about proof of God, that just because you find some scientific evidence, that doesn't actually prove a fact. It is evidence for the fact. Now, that being said, we're looking for evidences of whether or not there's a God, right? So I'm going to use some science and show you some logic and show you some historical evidence and some philosophy and morality and a lot of different proofs that there has to be a God. Now, before we do that, though, we also have to discuss different types of truth. There's objective truth and subjective truth. Objective truth is like facts that exist independent of your perception. And I can prove it. It is objectively true. Doesn't matter if you believe it or not, or if you've seen it or if you know it yourself. It's still true. Subjective truth is personal truth based on individual perspective, feelings, or experience. So my subjective truth might be that ice cream tastes good. You taste it and you decide this ice cream doesn't taste good. Those things are subjectively true. Yeah, it's true for you, but it's not true for everybody. Okay. Then we have two different basic types of knowledge that leads to truth. We have a priori and a posteriori. So a priori is known through pure reason alone. It's rational. It's like mathematical proof formulas. You know for a fact it's true. You can prove it. You can reason it. Like if A equals C and B equals C, then that means A and B are the same thing. They equal each other. Okay, mathematical rational proof. A posteriori, and I probably said that wrong, is known through sensory experience and observation. So these are things that I may not be able to rationally prove, but I could go outside and I could pick the flower and show you that that flower exists. So also absolute or objective truth. Then you have logical truth, which is statements that are true because of their form alone. For example, outside my house right now, it is not raining. So that is a statement, a logical truth that there's no way of changing that. It either is correct or it is false, just based on the words used in the statements, the form alone that you put it in. It is either true or it is not. You have scientific truth. These are theories that are validated through the scientific method and rigorous experimentation and observed and done by other people. So you're able to repeat the same things over and over again, and every time it's done, it's true. So those are scientific theories. And then you have historical truth, which I mentioned, like Columbus, the accurate presentation of past events based on the available evidence, not necessarily science. Then you have moral and ethical truth. What is true concerning what is good or bad, such as murder is wrong. Then you have religious truth. What is true concerning the documented beliefs of that particular religious group. So maybe not truth, but true for that religious group, and they hold to that and believe it, whether it's objectively true or scientifically true or not. Then you have philosophical truth, which is generally understood as the property of statements, beliefs, or propositions that accurately conform to reality and the world as it is. So philosophical truths is a whole nother thing. And here's what it all comes down to. There is such a thing as absolute truth. Absolute truth refers to inflexible, unalterable facts that are true at all times, in all places, for all people, independent of your personal beliefs, perspectives, or culture. Absolute truth represents an objective reality rather than your opinion or choice to believe in it or not. For example, mathematical facts, 2 plus 2, the laws of physics, gravity works. Those are absolute truths. They are unchanging. It doesn't change over time, unlike relative truth. It is objective, regardless of your human emotion or opinion. These things are absolutely true. It is universal. Absolute truth applies to all people, regardless of culture or your personal experience. Now, you can contrast that with relative truth, which is subjective, conditional, and dependent on your context. So, it is cold is a relative truth, whereas water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit is absolutely true. So, this truth, the idea of absolute truth, is a requirement for a logical discussion. If truth is not absolute, then why discuss truth at all? Because it might only be true today and then tomorrow it's not. So, for people who want to have a discussion that will say, no, no, I don't believe in absolute truth, ask them to make this statement. What is this statement true or false? Say, absolute truth does not exist. Do you believe that? Yes or no? And if they say yes, that's true. Absolute truth does not exist. Then ask them, is that absolutely true? Because if it is absolutely true that absolute truth does not exist, then it is also not true because the statement cannot be absolutely true. Logic breaks down and nothing is true. There is no such thing as truth. There is no reason to have any sort of discussion if you don't believe in truth. Now, if they say absolute truth does not exist is a false statement, then you guys are in agreement that absolute truth exists apart from individual belief or subjective truth. So, the whole reason I went through all of that here, hear me out, is that science is not always the answer. Logic, history, eyewitness testimony, personal experience, morality, philosophy can all compel someone to accept something as fact when other people won't accept it. And we've got to understand in this discussion of is there a God? God is supernatural. Supernatural is literally outside of the natural world and thus cannot be naturally proven or disproven, especially with science. So you have to take into account other measures of truth when discussing the supernatural. Now, science may offer some evidence, but it would be very hard pressed to provide absolute proof regarding God, angels, demons, heaven, hell, the afterlife, etc. The existence of God. Oh, and then this is the final point. Sorry. The existence of God in regards to truth is either absolutely true or absolutely false in our reality. The idea of God can exist in your brain or not. Someone can choose to not have an idea of God in their brain. But the reality of God is either true or false, regardless of what you believe or what I believe. And that's what we have to understand. It doesn't matter what your belief is. There either is a God or there is not a God. So let's look at some scientific evidence or proofs of God. The first one I want to cover is the existence of matter. Now, this is called the cosmological argument, and it's the argument of first cause. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist at some point in the past, therefore, it must have a cause outside of itself, a first cause, if you will. So, this first cause has to be a God. And here's why with the cosmological argument. It's commonly believed that the universe started billions of years ago by a big bang. Now, there's no scientific proof because nobody was there to see it. We have evidence of the planets, the universe, the galaxies, whirling through space. So science can only speculate about the beginning of all that because nobody was there to see it. There is no evidence as far as the scientific method that nobody can appear to us and tell us, hey, I saw the universe come into existence. I saw the Big Bang happen. All right. So science can only speculate on that. So if the Big Bang happened, if that's true, everything that exists has to have a cause. So what caused the Big Bang? If it was just matter that was compressed and then it exploded at some point in time, the question is, what caused the matter? Where did it come from? What caused the high pressure? And there, if you're like, well, it's the pressure of all the mass of the universe together in one spot naturally created such huge amounts of gravity and with that much matter, it had to implode or explode or whatever explanation you want to have for it. That's fine. But where did all that matter come from to begin with? So if all that matter of the universe always existed, that there was no beginning for it, then that is contrary to science. Science does not allow for eternal objects. We have the laws of thermodynamics. The first law states energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred or changed. The second law dictates that the total entropy of an isolated system always increases. So the universe itself would be a large isolated system. So, and what that means is natural processes are irreversible and energy spreads out. So people begin to see the second law in the idea of the Big Bang that as after it exploded, the energy spread out across the universe and they were set in an irreversible spin. But things are slowing down. The spread of the universe is slowing down and so on. So that's kind of the second law of thermodynamics, okay? But don't forget that science does not allow for eternal objects. Everything had a beginning, everything had a cause. So pretending to talk about science and using science to explain the origins of the universe and say the Big Bang started while pretending that a miracle that contradicts science is what brought the matter here It's always been here. So the matter of the universe has always existed. It was just compressed at some point in the past and then had a big bang. Well, that is contrary to science. It is intellectually dishonest to talk about something as if you're a scientist while you're relying on a miracle that contradicts science for the start of everything. So saying everything exploded out of nothing is magic. That's not science. If there was nothing there and then boom, everything appeared, that's not science. So again, you can't have science and the Big Bang at the same time. Something had to start it. The matter had to come from somewhere. Saying everything exploded out of nothing is not scientific. Saying that all the matter in the universe existed in a small compressed space in eternity past until it exploded is contrary to science. And in fact, it's making the claim that that matter that makes up the universe, the elements, the rocks, the dirt, is somehow eternal and always existed, which kind of makes matter a god or Mother Earth. You might as well say you worship nature and you just call your religion science so that people think you're smart. If the matter suddenly came into existence, as some people believe, that all space, matter, energy, and time suddenly came into existence out of nothing with the Big Bang, this means that whatever brought the Big Bang about, whatever caused it, is beyond space and time. Obviously, if it wasn't here, then something had to put it here. And whatever put it there exists outside of this known universe, beyond space, beyond time. It is clearly immaterial, not made up of elements. And this thing that caused it is unbelievably powerful. This is a description of the God of the Bible. Who else but God could have brought a universe into existence? Now, look, scientific theories are always subject to change, but the Big Bang, as currently understood, points to the existence of a first cause outside of the universe that is supernatural and more powerful than anything any human being has ever conceived of. That is God. That is the existence of a God. You can call it space alien if you want. I don't care. But that is the definition of the God of the Bible. Outside of time, matter, and space, and infinitely powerful. Now, that's the first argument, the cosmological argument. The second argument from science is the teleological argument, the argument of design. It's the order of the universe. So the universe exhibits complex, fine-tuned order, physical laws, biological complexity that suggests an intelligent designer rather than random chance. So let's go back to that second law of thermodynamics that I mentioned. It states that entropy increases. It talks about heat flow, energy quality, and the efficiency of the system. So the second law of thermodynamics is stating in a cyclic process that entropy will either increase or remain the same, never decrease. So entropy is a scientific measure of the system's thermal energy per unit temperature that is unavailable for useful work. So entropy represents the degree of disorder, randomness, or uncertainty within that system. So according to the laws of science, in any given system, and the universe is a closed system, the entropy will increase. That means disorder, randomness, and uncertainty, and loss of usable energy gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It is a central concept in thermodynamics, indicating that isolated systems spontaneously evolve toward maximum disorder. Evolution in science always leads to disorder, chaos, loss of energy, and less organized structures. That's a whole nother thing in there on evolution if you look at it scientifically. Now, in regards to entropy and the second law of thermodynamics, heat flow spontaneously flows from hotter to colder bodies, never vice versa. So things that are cold would warm up. They would grab the heat that is out there and use it. Now, the energy quality, that's a conversion of energy. So energy converts from high quality ordered energy to lower quality disordered forms during any process or exchange of energy. Typically, there's a loss of heat involved in that. Therefore, the efficiency of any system gets worse and worse over time. It is impossible to convert heat completely into usable energy. So any exchange of energy will never be 100% efficient. There is always a loss of energy, which brings about greater entropy. The system breaks down over time. So that's the second law of thermodynamics, which indicates that there had to have been a perfect state at some point that was had 100% of all the energy being used properly. Now, part of this teleological argument is the fine tuning of the universe towards life. And here's what I mean by that. There are processes that are so fine tuned and perfect that it is astronomically, mathematically impossible for the universe to have, by chance, developed these fine tuned forces. Now, I'm just going to name a couple, and you can Google the fine tuning of the universe if you want to find out some more stuff. But the nuclear forces of individual atoms, this is the force that holds together the protons and neutrons in the nucleus. If it were slightly weaker, the protons and neutrons wouldn't stick together, making molecules impossible. If the force holding the protons and neutrons together were stronger, the protons would bind to each other much faster, which leads to no stable hydrogen atoms. That's one of the big ones. Everything is held together by electrons, protons, and neutrons, right? And if they're not stable, if we don't have hydrogen in this world, like nothing would work. Also, we have, of course, the size and distance of the Earth from the sun. Earth's position in the solar system is what scientists call the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, which is just perfect for allowing liquid water to exist on our planet. The size of the Earth also ensures that it has the right gravity to retain an atmosphere suitable for life. That is astronomically impossible. We are the only planet to have ever been discovered with all of the telescopes out there that has this perfect Goldilocks zone to allow life and an atmosphere on this planet. Then we have carbon energy, carbon 12, the Hoyle state. For carbon to be produced inside stars, 3 helium nuclei must fuse together. This process really requires a specific energy level in carbon 12, which is called scientifically, it's the Hoyle state. He's the guy that discovered it. If this energy level were off by just a few percent, the universe would contain almost zero carbon. All life on Earth is carbon based. Carbon's unique ability to form stable, complex, and diverse chain molecules like DNA, RNA, proteins, and lipids makes it the foundational element for biological structures. Now, silicon is discussed as an alternate in science fiction, but all life that is known to exist only uses carbon chemistry. We are carbon life forms, all right? The presence of humanity, the presence of life forms, is an astronomical impossibility. Now, here's just a couple of scientist quotes about this teleological argument, the argument of design, that there's a fine tuning of the universe towards life with impossible odds, like literally so far beyond the possibility of these things existing that the chance is like 1 in 10 to the trillionth power or something. It's ridiculous. So here's some quotes. Fred Hoyle, he's a prominent British astronomer, a mathematician, and an agnostic, and he stated, quote, a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature, end quote. He says, and he doesn't believe in God, that the only possible way for nature to exist, for chemistry, biology, physics, and humanity to exist, is if a super intellect has put everything together. Stephen Hawking, who is a renowned English theoretical physicist, cosmologist, and an author, wrote, quote, "The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seems to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life." End quote. Adjusted by who? Obviously, God. There's a physicist, I believe he's still alive in Phoenix, Arizona. PCW Davies is he's very well known theoretical physicist, cosmologist, and astrobiologist, and he wrote, "The entire universe is balanced on a knife edge and would be total chaos if any of the natural constants were off even slightly." End quote. The fine tuning of numerous constants and quantities of the universe is unexpected, mysterious, and completely unscientific if naturalism is true. But if Christianity is true and there is a God that designed all this, it makes perfect sense. So here's the summary on this first series on proof of God. The idea of proof and truth is absolutely real and is shown in many different ways, but it requires the acknowledgement of absolute truth. Scientifically, the need for a God is very real. The cosmological argument, in summary, states that our very existence requires a powerful being outside of nature. There must be a first cause to have started the universe. What caused the Big Bang? Also, our planet moves, our solar system moves, our galaxy moves, the universe moves itself. There must have been a first mover that pushed them to get them going. Who lit the fuse for the Big Bang? Who or what is the first mover of objects in our plane of existence? Someone who's outside of our plane of existence, a supernatural being, an elite super intellect that has designed everything. God. Then you have the teleological argument, which is design. The laws of nature itself requires a lawgiver. The laws of thermodynamics state that everything is wearing out, falling apart, losing energy, and thus had to have a starting point when it was perfect. So who started it? Where did all that energy come from? The knife edge balance of everything perfectly fitted together to allow life on Earth requires a designer. Now, I did a topic on the origins, creation origins, season 3, episode 41, if you want to check that out. The philosophical, moral, and historical evidence for God will be in the next couple of episodes. Just remember Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God. Don't forget the rest of that phrase, created the heaven and the earth. But in the beginning, there was God. Thank you for listening. And until next time, keep searching for truth.